G'day, I'm ZiggyD, and over the past 2 months I've undertaken a journey to learn all about the world of Magic the Gathering. Now, ethics and proper disclosure are very important to me when it comes to promotional content, so right at the start of the video here I wanted to disclose to you guys that this is part of a paid promotion, this entire 3-part series. However, all opinions shared are my own, and if you'd like to read anything more about my personal code of ethics, then you can visit my site ziggyd.tv/ethics. So, with that said, I'm very excited to share this journey with you and what I've learned, so let's get into it. So what led me to taking on a sponsorship for a trading card game, seemingly a world away from my regular content in the gaming world? Well, for many years now, I've actually been curious about Magic the Gathering. I'd heard about it from a few different overseas friends, and I had of course seen it referenced countless times in online gaming circles. And what really got me curious about the game was that whenever people spoke about Magic, they spoke with this real sense of excitement. I'd also noticed that whenever two people found out they each played Magic, there would be this fervent exchange that I just couldn't follow. It was like I was completely missing out on this awesome hobby and community that was just hidden away to me. I've been curious for Magic for quite a few years now, and yet I never tried the game up until 2 months ago. Why? Well, honestly, to be honest, I was intimidated. From the outside, Magic the Gathering seems like a huge undertaking, impossible for anyone that wasn't born into it to get involved. And obviously I don't mean born into it, I mean people who grew up with friends playing it. It seems like a hugely complex game and unfriendly to beginners, which is pretty funny coming from me, I know, given that I've actually built a career here on YouTube of breaking down a hugely complex game like Path of Exile for beginners to understand. But still, I thought no way I had the time or patience to learn Magic. And on top of that, I've heard that it was very expensive to actually play this game, and on top of that, how welcome would a new player even be to this seemingly close-knit community of friends already playing the game? I felt like I'd be kind of barging my way into this circle of friends where I didn't belong. So I just kept putting it off, and it remained nothing more than a distant curiosity in my mind for many years. However, that changed a couple months ago when I was invited to an event specifically dedicated to learning how to play Magic, an invitation that came from a representative of Hasbro, the parent company behind Magic the Gathering. They were interested in taking on some sponsored partners to help showcase the game, and they wanted to give us a chance to try it first. This seemed like a pretty good arrangement, and after years of being curious, I jumped at the opportunity to finally learn some Magic. So more on my experiences at that event and the events that followed in a moment, but suffice to say for now, after learning the basics of how to play along with my partner Amy, I knew that this was for me. Learning about this game and sharing my experiences with you guys was something I wanted to do, sponsorship or not. And so, I pitched an idea to Hasbro. I would learn about the game, its community and its content expansions from the perspective of a complete outsider, and then I would share what I'd learned with you guys. Well, Hasbro loved the idea, and here we are. Since then, I've been to 3 Magic events, played probably close to 100 games, and already built up quite the collection of cards. I've also found myself constantly sharing my experiences a lot with my stream viewers and friends on Twitter, as well as playing games almost daily over dinner with my partner Amy. It's been a pretty epic journey, and I'm eager now to share what I've learned with you guys. So wait. Let's jump back a little bit. What is Magic the Gathering? Let's start at the beginning a little bit here. Magic is a game in which, most commonly, 2 players take customized decks of cards and try to out-strategize and outwit their opponent. The lore behind it is that each player represents a wizard known as a planeswalker, who have come together to do battle. The ultimate goal of the game is to do enough damage to your opponent to outright kill them, and each player will employ a mixture of spells to do so. Don't worry, it's perfectly safe. Some of these spells will summon creatures to fight for you, some will outright deal damage, and some will control the battlefield, and some will counter the moves of your opponent. Our basic game plays out with each player taking turns to play cards and attack their opponent, with opportunities for your opponent to block with their creatures and play their own counter spells. I think the biggest thing about the actual gameplay that gets so many people hooked, and I've had a few chances to experience this already now, is that there are tons of opportunities to pull really clever combos and counters to outwit and sometimes frustrate your opponent. It's intensely satisfying when you bait your opponent into falling for a combo of yours, or when you destroy their cleverly conceived plays with counters of your own. I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. Sometimes you'll have games that just kind of go nowhere and are kind of frustrating. But at the end of these games, you shake hands and you play another. And then you'll have a match that's super fun. with lots of back and forth, and sometimes you'll even have a match that's incredibly memorable. Amy and I actually find ourselves still talking about the games we've played days or even weeks later. So how do you actually play a game of Magic? Well, I'm not actually going to teach you that, guys, in this video. Not because I don't want to, I'm not a jerk, but because I don't actually think that's the best way to learn. Rather, I'll tell you guys what are the best ways to learn. The best way to learn, of course, is to have an experienced Magic player teach you directly. This is like most things in life. And this is how I learned. At the event in Sydney, I went to a volunteer Magic player, sat down and played a mini 1v1 game with me using starter decks and walked me through the turns. They walked me through the basics of what you do on each turn and a few of the basic card mechanics as they came up over the course of the game. And by the end of the first game, I had the basics down pat. I was really surprised at how easy it was to actually learn to physically play a game of Magic. Sure, there are tons of more complex mechanics, combos and obscure rules that can be called upon into competitive play, but casual play, often referred to as kitchen table Magic, is really quite easy to get into. 1 to 2 practice games with an experienced player and a simple starter deck is enough to get going. Amy and I played about 4 games that night, and after the event we went back to a hotel and played a couple more games ourselves and had a really good time with it. So, if you have a friend who plays, they should be your first point of call. I can assure you they'll be psyched to have you taking an interest in their hobby, and they'll be more than happy to teach you play. And that actually extends beyond your circle of friends too. I've asked questions about card mechanics and rules to tons of random Magic players that didn't even know me, and every time they were more than happy to explain things to me. I'll talk more about the Magic community in the next video, but one thing has been made evident to me. Magic players are always outright excited to actually share their knowledge with new players. If you don't already know anyone who plays but still want to learn, you can likely find a group of players near you. The most common way is to ask at your local games and hobby store. You can even use the store and event locators on the official MTG site or on sites like MTG Finder, both of which I'll link in the description below for you guys. Most of these stores will have nights that they play a format called drafts or other events on, and many stores will actually have beginner-friendly nights as well. And if you want to learn how to play before you even approach another player, then you have the option of Magic DUELS on Steam. This is great if you're worried that you might pick up things a little slowly, as you can go 100% at your own pace. Magic DUELS has really well done tutorials. These tutorials put you in a game designed to showcase certain mechanics, and then whenever a new mechanic comes up, it gives you the option of actually pausing that game, kind of zooming back out and then zooming back into this tutorial encounter that explains and has you play through that mechanic. Playing through the tutorials and one of the story modes will get you up to speed on the basics and even some of the finer points of strategy, enough to get you in and potentially even win a few games against experienced players. And Magic DUELS is free to play as well. I'll include a link to it in the description of the video too. I played a few hours of DUELS on my livestream when I was pretty early into the learning process, and it really helped me solidify some mechanics in my mind and teach me some of the finer points of the game. So it's a great idea even if you've already started learning. So now that you know how to learn to play, let's talk decks and the formats the game is played in. The decks of cards used in Magic are typically hand-built by players, though it's possible for players that just want to jump in and play to use pre-made decks. As a newer player, I recommend starting with one of these pre-made decks and slowly modifying it card by card. I'll discuss some of these options of starter decks in a moment. As for game rules, there are multiple formats that you can play, the most common being 2 players that use pre-constructed 60 card decks in a 1v1 format. However, there are other popular modes such as Two-Headed Giant, which is a 2v2 mode, or even drafts where up to 8 players build a deck from new cards at the very table, and then play in a mini tournament setting using those decks. This is a mode that tests both your on-the-spot decision making to build a deck from limited options, as well as your actual gameplay skill and strategy. This is probably my favourite format. In my journey so far, I've played standard games, drafts, Two-Headed Giants, and I've even been to a sealed event. You won't need to know about all these different formats to get started, but I'm impressed with how many different ways there are of playing. As a beginner, my recommendation is to just start with your kitchen table Magic casual format. You and a friend grab a deck each and play a simple 1v1 game. From there, I recommend branching out into Two-Headed Giants if you have a couple more friends that want to play. It's a really fun mode, especially for a double date actually. And then branch out into draft events at your local stores. Drafting has quickly become my favourite way to play because I love building up a deck on the spot and seeing what everyone else comes up with, and then you typically get to keep the cards you use, so it's a great way to add to your collection in a much more interesting and meaningful way. You get to know the cards a lot better as you add them to your collection. So, we've overcome two of my fears already, that the game is hard to learn to play and that people would be unwelcoming. Both of these have been thoroughly proven false to me, which I'm pretty glad about. What about my third fear then? And this is one I hear a lot with Magic, that the game is expensive. Well, it's partially true. Magic can be very expensive. The highest levels of competitive play feature decks worth hundreds of dollars, and collecting old or rare cards can be pretty expensive too. And you've all probably heard about cards like the Black Lotus, exceptionally rare and valuable. Side note, I actually got to see one of these in person, which was really cool. Well, it turns out that that's the stuff that makes headlines outside of Magic, because it's impressive or even shocking how much money it's possible to spend on the game. Thing is, this is pretty true for almost any hobby. If you get deep enough into pretty much any hobby, I assure you, you can find ways to spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars on it. What doesn't typically get talked about on the media and by people outside of the community is how cheaply you can get into casual Magic play. You can get 2 decks ready to play for $30 Australian or $20 US through a DUELS pack. These are pre-made decks with a mixture of rare and regular cards that are balanced to play against each other and provide an interesting game. Packs like this are perfect if you want to learn to play with a friend or a partner. And they're actually pretty fun too. The Blessed vs Cursed pact Amy and I picked up results in some epic battles with tons of zombies facing off against human militia supported by angels and spirits. It's a big epic mode and we've had a lot of fun with it. And if you just want a deck for yourself to start with, then the intro packs are only $25 Australian or about $10 to $15 US. These include a decent pre-made deck to get learning with and 2 booster packs of cards to customize it with. This is a great place to start as the decks are well built with synergizing cards, you can learn about some of the mechanics through them, and then you can learn about deck building by slowly swapping in and out cards from the boosters you started with. Amy and I learned to build decks by starting with these intro packs and modifying them and testing them against each other to learn what impacts our modifications had. So at about 25 to 30 Australian or 10 to 20 US dollars to get started, I would compare Magic to most other card or board games you might buy. Only Magic has the option of far more expansions and customizations than other options if you start to get into it. So although the game can be very expensive, with casual play, the ratio of money spent to hours of entertainment received seems pretty solid. Certainly better value than other board games I've purchased, and certainly better dollar per hour of entertainment than something like a trip to the cinema. Just watch out for those booster packs though. Opening them can be super addictive. Especially if you find yourself falling victim to the allure of the sweet shiny foil cards and that beautiful scent of cracking a fresh booster pack. Ugh. I think they got this like little split here you gotta open them from. There we go. All the packs open differently. Oh baby. Oh baby. Look at that. Oh. Don't touch it with your fingers. Don't touch it. We pulled a mythic. Ulamog, the ceaseless hunger. Is our 10 for 10, man? Yes. Sleeve it, guys. We're gonna sleeve it. Alright, don't touch it, don't touch it. Don't touch it. There we go, okay. Alright. Damn, nice. And we got it, and we got a shiny from that pull as well. That same booster pack. So, 2 months down the line, how am I going? I think, not too bad. I was honestly surprised how easy it was to get into the game, and get playing to a point where Amy and I could just have a relaxed game in the evening. We'd actually been looking for a 2-player board game for ages, but it's pretty hard to find a good one that we're both keen on. If nothing else, Magic has become that game. It's a great excuse to get together away from the computers for once, and to chat and have a laugh. Through my learnings, I've played games with tons of other players, even one of my Twitch viewers I bumped into at an event. I've even won a few matches against some far more experienced players at drafts, an immensely satisfying experience by the way. I'm currently building my first deck from scratch with the new expansion Shadows over Innistrad, a deck that sacrifices its own creatures to gain powerful effects, pretty cool. And I've got 2 other decks I'm modifying from the starter packs. I've also discovered that there are some pretty cathartic feelings associated with organising your collection of cards too. Unexpected for me given how poorly organised things like my in-game stash is in Path of Exile. So if my story of getting into Magic reminds you of yourself, curious about the game but nervous or reluctant to give it a try, then consider giving it a go, because your learning experiences will probably be quite fun, just like mine were. I hope you've enjoyed this first part of the series. In the second part, we're going to be taking a look at the community behind the game, and in the third part, we'll take a look at how the game expands and grows over time. I'll see you guys then. That's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching. Transgress the mind. Oh my god, look at that art! Holy shit. He's reaching through the back of his head and out of his mouth. Oh my god, that is nightmare fuel. Definitely imprint that image. Imprint that image into your mind when you go to sleep tonight, guys. That faceless creature reaching through the back of your head. That's epic. That is epic.